You ever spend like hours crafting this perfect, detailed backstory for your character, only for it to feel like it never comes up in the game? It's a super common problem in TTRPGs. But what if I told you the fix isn't about better role-playing or weird new rules? It's all about how we design our scenes. So today, we're going to talk about how to build scenes that don't just react to what your characters do, but to who they fundamentally are.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to nail down why backgrounds often end up feeling like just a bit of flavor text. Then we'll get into a major mental shift, from just finding clues to really seeing different perspectives. After that, I'll walk you through a super practical 3-layer framework you can use. We'll see what that looks like in a real game, and then wrap up with why this approach makes the whole campaign better in the long run. Okay, let's get right to the heart of it. Why do those backstories we work so hard on just fizzle out? Well, it pretty much all boils down to one thing: the way most scenes are designed from the ground up. This right here, this is the core of the issue. A static scene is basically a fixed puzzle, you know? It's got one set of clues and usually one intended solution. It's the exact same room for every party, and it doesn't really change unless a player actively does something to it. And this comparison just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the standard way. Players have to poke and prod the scene, usually with skill checks to get anything out of it. But on the right, we have a dynamic model. This is where the scene itself changes, revealing different information based on who's looking. It just makes sense, right? A sailor and a scholar are going to notice completely different things, and our games should absolutely reflect them. So here's the big takeaway from this section: the real mindset shift. If a player's background feels useless, it is not their fault for failing to bring it up. It's on us, as the game masters, for not designing scenes that were looking for it in the first place. All right, so now for the big aha moment. This isn't about just cramming more hidden things into a room for your players to find. It's about completely changing how we think about information itself. This is it. This is the key. Instead of our prep notes asking, what clues are hidden here, they should be asking, how would a soldier interpret this room? How would a criminal interpret it? Suddenly, investigation is less about a perception check to find a hidden loose brick and way more about understanding the meaning of things that are already in plain sight. Let's make this super concrete with a simple example. Think about a single piece of evidence, one muddy footprint. In a static, boring scene, it's just a clue. You find it, you move on. But in a dynamic scene, oh man, its meaning can change completely depending on who's in the room. So, for a character with a soldier background, that footprint isn't just a random smudge. No way. It suggests a pattern, discipline, maybe even an official presence. It screams patrol route, which tells them there are probably more soldiers around, and they walk this way all the time. Okay, but now, what if the party's rogue with a criminal background sees that exact same footprint? They're not seeing an official patrol. They're seeing the total opposite. They see a back alley path, a shortcut made specifically to avoid the patrols. For them, that footprint is a blaring sign of some kind of shady business.
And then the ranger comes along, looks at the very same detail, and sees something else entirely. To them, it's a game trail, a path used for hunting. It tells them about the local wildlife, or maybe a nearby hunter. See, it's the exact same detail, but it gives you 3 completely different interpretations and 3 totally different leads to follow. And it all comes from who the character is, not from what they rolled.
Okay, that all sounds great, right? But how do we actually build this into our prep without it taking forever? Well, let's break down a really practical 3-layer framework that puts all this theory into action. Now, it's really important to remember, these aren't 3 different types of clues you have to hide. Just think of them as 3 layers of perspective that you build into every scene. When you put them together, you get this amazing system that keeps the story moving forward while making every character feel uniquely valuable. So, layer 1 is your foundation. I like to call it the universal truths. These are the big, obvious things that literally anyone walking into the room would notice. The overturned table, the pool of blood, the missing painting. This gives the whole party a baseline to work from, and, this is super important, it keeps the game from grinding to a halt if they miss a key clue. Now, layer 2. This is where the magic really happens. These are the background-sensitive details. So these are things that might be visible to everyone, but they only mean something to certain characters. You can see the examples here. The sailor is the only one who recognizes that specific knot. The merchant is the one who spots the trade markings on a crate. The noble immediately identifies the wax seal on a letter. These details give everybody a different angle on those universal truths from layer 1.
And layer 3 is the payoff. It's the contextual revelation. This is not a clue you write down and hand to them. This is that incredible aha moment that happens at the table when players start connecting the dots themselves. The Sailors player suddenly goes, wait a second, that knot from layer 2 is only used by the Royal Navy, but we know from layer 1 that the victim was a pirate. That doesn't add up. That's real investigation. That's insight.
So we've got the theory, we've got the framework, but what does this actually feel like at the table? How does it change the game, moment to moment, for your players? I think this slide shows the difference so perfectly. You know the old way, right? It always ends up being one player, the one with the high investigation skill, rolling again and again, while everyone else kind of just stands around. But the new way, it changes the prompt entirely. You're not asking for a roll. You're saying, as a noble, you recognize this symbol. And just like that, you're bringing more people into the conversation, and the game becomes less about guessing and more about actual collaborative reasoning. It's so much better. Now, using this design philosophy isn't just about making one cool murder mystery scene. It actually has these really profound long-term benefits that can make your entire campaign healthier and way more engaging. I mean, look at this. It's basically a fundamental upgrade to your game's whole engine. It helps prevent those awful investigation stalls. It stops that cycle of just brute force rolling skill checks over and over. It keeps one player from dominating every single puzzle. And best of all, it actively encourages roleplay because a character's identity becomes a core game mechanic. The mysteries feel more organic, and the backgrounds, they finally feel real. And really, this is what it all comes down to. This is the ultimate takeaway. We all want our players to feel like their choices matter, starting with the very first choice they made, who their character is. By designing scenes that actually see and react to those identities, we're creating a world that feels responsive and alive. And in doing that, we make our players feel truly seen. And that, my friends, is how you make backgrounds matter.